The great chamber was silent when Yuna walked to the speaking platform. 12 species watched her from their seats. Some had eyes. Some had sensors. Some simply existed as clouds of thinking gas. All of them looked at the small human woman with the same expression. It was the look one gives to a child who has interrupted the adults. Yuna wore simple clothes. No medals, no symbols of rank. Just a gray uniform that matched her gray hair. She was 60 years old, and she had spent 40 of those years serving as humanity's voice in this chamber. 40 years of being ignored. 40 years of watching her proposals get voted down. 40 years of polite smiles that hid deep contempt. She placed her hands on the speaking rail and looked at the assembled counselors. Hi, Counselor. Morath of the Veth sat in the center seat. His insectoid body clicked and shifted with impatience. The Veth were the oldest species in the council. They had been building empires when humans were still living in caves. Morath had made this fact clear to Yuna many times over the years. You requested emergency time, Morath said. His voice buzzed through the translation systems. Speak quickly. We have important matters to discuss, Yuna nodded. She had prepared a long speech once. Pages and pages of words explaining why humanity was leaving. But standing here now, looking at their bored faces, she realized none of it mattered. They would not listen. They had never listened. Humanity is withdrawing from all galactic affairs, she said. Effective immediately. Our colonies will go dark. Our ships will leave your trade routes. Our scientists will stop their work on your worlds. This is goodbye. The silence that followed was different from the silence before. It was confused silence. Then it became amused silence. Morath made a sound that the translator called laughter. Is this a joke, Ambassador? Are humans attempting humor? No, High Counselor. This is not a joke. Then it is a tantrum. Morath waved one of his forearms dismissively. Go ahead. Take your people and sulk in your little corner of the spiral arm. When you are ready to behave like adults, you may apply for readmission to the council. The other species made sounds of agreement. The crystalline aurum chimed softly. The gas beans called, the hollow swirled with what looked like amusement. Even the smaller species, the ones who had joined the council after humanity, seemed to enjoy watching the young species embarrass themselves. Only one being remained still. Archivist Seho of the Aurum sat in the observer gallery, his crystal body pulsing with pale blue light. He was old even by Aurum standards. He had lived for 3,000 years and had seen many species come and go. Something in Yuna's voice troubled him. There was no anger in it. No pride. Only sadness. Deep, heavy sadness. Yuna bowed her head slightly. I wish you well, she said. All of you. I truly do. She stepped down from the platform and walked out of the chamber. She did not look back. 3 days later, the human colonies began going dark. Admiral Taiwu stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, humanity's flagship. Around him, hundreds of ships waited in formation. These were the last human vessels visible to galactic sensors. Behind them, through a fold in space that no other species knew how to create. The rest of humanity's fleet had already departed. Taiwu was a tall man with a weathered face. He had served in the fleet for 50 years. He had fought pirates. He had hunted void predators in the deep black. He had escorted refugee ships and delivered medicine to dying worlds. None of it had earned humanity any respect from the Council. Sir, his communications officer said, the Council is demanding to know our destination. Let them demand. They are threatening sanctions. Taiwu almost smiled. Sanctions against ships they cannot find. How terrifying. On the main screen, he watched the last human colonies power down their beacons. One by one, lights went out across the spiral arm. Mining stations. Research posts. Agricultural worlds. All of them going quiet. All of them saying goodbye. Sir, Earth Station 7 is requesting permission to broadcast a final message. Taiwu nodded. Granted. The message was simple. It came from Taiwu himself, recorded earlier that morning. His face appeared on every screen in the known galaxy for exactly 30 seconds. We tried to warn you, the recording said. Now we must prepare. When the silence ends, remember that we asked you to listen." And then the transmission cut off. The Eternal Dawn and its fleet jumped to unknown coordinates. Galactic sensors registered a brief flash of exotic energy, and then nothing. The humans were gone. In the council chamber, High Counselor Morath called an emergency session. "This is unacceptable," he declared. "We must find them. We must bring them back and punish them for this insult." Trade Minister Vecca, a hollow whose gaseous form shifted between purple and gray, made a sound of uncertainty. "Perhaps we should first understand why they left." The human ambassador seemed troubled. "Perhaps there is a reason for their departure." "The reason is obvious," Morath snapped. "They are primitives. They could not handle the demands of galactic civilization. Good riddance to them." The vote was quick and decisive. Humanity was erased from official records. Their seats in the chamber were removed. Their contributions to galactic science were reassigned to other species. Within one standard cycle, it was as if humans had never existed. Archivist Seho watched the proceedings from his place in the gallery. He did not vote. He did not speak. But he remembered Yuna's face. He remembered her words. And he remembered something she had said to him once, years ago, in a quiet hallway outside the chamber. "We do so much for them," she had whispered, "and they do not even notice. One day, they will notice. I only hope it is not too late." Seho did not understand what she meant then. He would understand soon enough. The galaxy continued turning. Trade ships flew their routes. Wars were fought and peace treaties signed. Life went on, as it always had. And in the spaces between stars, in the quiet places where no one looked, things began to change. Small things at first. Unnoticed things, but the silence had begun. And silence, as humanity knew, never lasted forever. 15 years passed, and the galaxy began to rot. It started with small things. A fungal infection on Veth Prime, the agricultural heart of the insectoid empire. The crops turned black overnight. Millions of acres of food became poison. Scientists worked for months trying to understand what happened. They found the answer buried in old maintenance logs. Human biologists had been treating the soil with special enzymes for decades. They had been fighting this fungus in secret, never asking for credit, never telling anyone. When they left, the treatment stopped. And the fungus woke up. High Counselor Morath refused to acknowledge the connection. "Coincidence," he declared. "Our scientists will solve this." They did not solve it. The famine spread to 3 more worlds before the Veth developed their own treatment. By then, 2 billion of their people had died. The Hollow discovered a different problem. Their ancient navigation beacons, the ones that guided ships through the dangerous nebula regions, began failing. These beacons had operated perfectly for 10,000 years. Now they flickered and died one after another. Trade Minister Vecca investigated personally. He found maintenance records going back centuries. Human engineers had been repairing these beacons during what the Council called routine inspections. The repairs were tiny. A crystal here. A power coupling there. Work so small that no one bothered to record it officially. Work that no one noticed until it stopped. 17 cargo ships were lost in the nebulas before new beacon systems could be installed. 30,000 crew members died in the dark between stars, and then came the Void Predators. These were ancient creatures, older than any known civilization. They lived in the empty spaces between solar systems, feeding on radiation and organic matter. They were mindless and hungry and very, very large. For centuries, they had been kept away from inhabited space. No one knew how. No one asked. Commander Jisoo had known. She had led human patrol fleets through the deep black for 30 years, hunting void predators before they could reach populated worlds. Her crew worked without glory. No medals, no parades. Just long months in the cold darkness, protecting people who would never know their names. Archivist Seho found her service records while investigating the sudden increase in predator attacks. Jisoo had killed over 2,000 void predators in her career. Her fleet had lost 60 ships doing this work. And when humans departed, the patrols stopped. Now the predators were coming. Colony after colony reported sightings. Then attacks. Then silence. Seiho brought his findings to the council. He had gathered thousands of documents, maintenance logs, patrol records, scientific reports. All of them showed the same thing. Humanity had been performing countless small tasks across the galaxy, fixing things, protecting things, healing things, never asking for recognition, never demanding payment. They were the quiet hands, Seiho told the council. They held back the darkness while we mocked them. Morth's response was immediate and harsh. You dare to praise the deserters? You dare to suggest that we needed those primitives? I suggest nothing, High Counselor. I only present facts. Your facts are propaganda. Perhaps you help them escape. Perhaps you are a traitor. The vote to silence Seiho passed quickly. His research was classified. His position was terminated. He was sent to a remote station at the edge of Aurum space, forbidden to contact anyone. But Seiho had made copies of everything. And he was not the only one who had noticed the pattern. Trade Minister Vecca came to visit him 3 months later. The hollow's gaseous form was darker than usual, gray with worry. I believe you, Vecca said. I have seen too much to deny it now. But I do not understand why. Why did the humans do all of this without telling us? Seiho played a recording he had found buried in the archives. It showed a human scientist named Doyan speaking to an empty conference room. The recording was over 100 years old. Doyan was a thin man with kind eyes and messy hair. He looked tired in the way that people look tired when they have been carrying heavy things for too long. I submitted another proposal today, Doyan said to the empty room. They rejected it, of course. They always reject our proposals. The Veth representative laughed at me. He said humans do not understand how the galaxy works. He said we should be grateful they allow us to sit in the same chamber as real civilizations. Doyan paused and rubbed his eyes. Maybe he is right. Maybe we are primitive. Maybe we do not understand their politics and their power games. But we understand something they have forgotten. Civilization is not built on glory. It is not built on conquest or wealth or the loudest voice in the room. It is built on the small hands that hold back the dark. The farmers who grow food, the engineers who fix machines, the soldiers who patrol borders no one remembers exist. He looked directly at the camera, as if he knew someone would watch this recording someday. We will keep doing this work, not because they thank us, not because they notice, but because it is right, because someone must do it, and because when the darkness finally comes, and it will come, perhaps they will remember that we tried to warn them. The recording ended. Vecca floated in silence for a long time. He knew, Vecca finally said. He knew this would happen. They all knew, Seiho replied. Every human who ever served in this galaxy knew exactly what would happen when they left. And they left anyway. Why? Seiho turned to look out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, in the spaces between those stars, humanity was preparing for something. Something they had seen coming for 200 years, because we did not listen, Seiho said. They warned us again and again. About the fungus. About the beacons. About the predators. About everything. We laughed at them. We ignored them. We called them children playing at being adults. And now the darkness is coming, and we have no one to hold it back. Outside the window, a star flickered and went dark. Then another. Then another. The galaxy was beginning to notice the silence, and the silence was beginning to notice the galaxy. 30 years after humanity departed, a Veth exploration ship found something at the edge of the galaxy. The ship was called the Seeker of Truth. Its captain had been searching for new mining worlds in unexplored space. What he found instead was a structure so large that his sensors could not measure it. It hung in the void like a door carved into nothing. Black metal twisted into shapes that hurt the eyes. Symbols covered every surface. Glowing with faint purple light, the captain sent images back to the council before his ship went silent. The last transmission showed the structure beginning to open. High Counselor Morith studied the images for hours. The symbols matched no known language. The metal matched no known element. The geometry followed no known physics. "What is this thing?" Morath demanded. "Where did it come from?" His scientists had no answers. The Hollow had no answers. The Aurum searched their memory crystals for 10,000 years of history and found nothing. But Archivist Seho recognized the symbols. He had seen them in a human text, a banned book that he had discovered during his research years ago. The book was old, written by human scholars who had explored deep space before anyone else. The Council had ordered it destroyed. Seho had kept a copy. He knew he was forbidden to leave his exile station. He knew he would be executed if caught. But he also knew that something terrible was coming, and he might be the only one who understood what it was. He stole a small ship and traveled to a neutral trading station at the edge of known space. The station had no laws, no government. It was a place where people went to disappear. There he found Bora. She was an old human woman, nearly 90 years old. Her hair was white, and her hands shook when she poured tea. She had stayed behind when humanity departed. "Too old for the journey," she said. "Too tired to start again." She lived in a tiny room filled with books and pictures. Photos of children and grandchildren she would never see again. Maps of stars that humans no longer called home. "I wondered when someone would come," Bora said. "I hoped it would be sooner. But then again, you never did listen quickly, did you?" Seho showed her the images from the Seeker of Truth. Bora's hands stopped shaking. Her old eyes grew sharp. "So it begins," she whispered. "We prayed we would have more time. We prayed they would be ready. What is that structure? What do those symbols mean?" Bora was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to a shelf covered in dust. She pulled down a small box and opened it carefully. Inside was a crystal, glowing with soft blue light. "This is my inheritance," she said. "Every human who stayed behind was given one. It contains our history. The real history. The one your council tried to erase." She placed the crystal in Seho's hands. 200 years ago, human explorers found that structure. We called it the Threshold. It is not a door built by any species in this galaxy. It is older than the galaxy itself. It was here before the first star burned. It will be here after the last star dies. What is behind it? Something that should never have been disturbed. Something that feeds on minds, on thoughts, on consciousness itself. It has many names. The Hollow once called it the Unmaking. The ancient Veth called it the Eater of Souls. We simply called it the Dark. Seho felt cold spreading through his crystal body. For billions of years, the Threshold held it back, Bora continued. But the seals were never meant to last forever. They needed to be maintained, strengthened, watched, donned. And humanity discovered this. Yes, we found ancient texts from species that died before your council was born. Instructions for maintaining the seals. Warnings about what would happen if they failed. Why did you not tell us? Bora laughed, but there was no joy in it. We tried. Oh, how we tried. Doyan presented evidence to the council 17 times. 17 times they rejected him. They said humans were superstitious. They said we were afraid of shadows. They said we should focus on productive work instead of spreading fear. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. But we did not stop. We could not stop. So we worked in secret. Human scientists mapped every weak point in the seals. Human engineers reinforced them quietly, disguising the work as routine maintenance. Human patrols guarded the barrier worlds where the seals were strongest. The barrier worlds, Seho said. The council authorized mining operations on those worlds 15 years ago. Yes, we begged them to stop. We warned them that disturbing those worlds would weaken the seals. They ignored us. They called us paranoid. They sent their mining ships and tore open the mountains and pulled out the metals that held the darkness at bay. Tears ran down Bora's wrinkled cheeks. It was when we knew we had to leave. Not to run away. Not to hide, but to prepare. Because we knew the seals would fail. And when they failed, someone would need to fight. Where did humanity go? What are they building? Bora smiled through her tears. They went to a place between places, a dimension that exists outside normal space. They are building something there, a weapon, a shield, a final hope. She took Siho's hand in her shaking fingers. They are building an ark to save what can be saved, and they are building a sword to fight what cannot be stopped. They call it the Vigil, and when the threshold opens, they will be ready. Will it be enough? Bora closed her eyes. I do not know, but I know this. When the darkness comes, humanity will not hide. We never have. We walk into the dark and carry our own light. It is who we are. It is who we have always been. Outside the window, the stars seemed dimmer than before. The threshold was opening, and something was beginning to wake. The threshold opened on a quiet morning. There was no warning, no explosion, no sound at all. One moment, the structure hung silent in the void. The next moment, it simply opened, like an eye waking from a long sleep. What came through was not an army. It was not a fleet of ships or a swarm of creatures. It was something much worse. It was nothing. A darkness that moved with purpose. A shadow that thought. The first world to fall was a Veth colony called New Promise. 10 million people lived there. Farmers and teachers and children playing in green fields. One morning they were alive. By evening they were empty. The bodies remained. Hearts still beating. Lungs still breathing. But behind the eyes there was nothing. No thought. No memory. No self. The darkness had fed on their minds and left hollow shells behind. The Council sent warships. The greatest fleet in galactic history gathered above New Promise and opened fire. Missiles flew. Energy beams burned through space. Enough firepower to crack a planet. The darkness did not notice. It flowed through the fleet like water through fingers. One by one, the ships went silent. Their crews stood at their posts with blank eyes and empty minds. The fleet drifted dead in the void. High Counselor Morith broadcast an emergency message to every species in the galaxy. This is not a war, he said. His voice shook with fear he could not hide. This is the end of everything. We need help. We need the humans. He sent signals into the void, begging, pleading, offering anything humanity wanted. Power, wealth, apologies. Anything. There was no answer. The darkness spread. World after world fell silent. The Aurum lost 3 of their crystal cities. The Hollow watched helplessly as entire gas clouds went dark, their people's minds devoured in seconds. Species that had existed for millions of years were erased in days. Archivist Siho and Trade Minister Veka met in secret on a dying station at the edge of safe space. Behind them, the darkness crept closer. Ahead of them, somewhere in the void, humanity was waiting. We must find them, Veka said. They are our only hope. I've been searching for years, Siho replied. They left no trail. They wanted to disappear. Then we search harder. They gathered a small crew of volunteers, scientists and soldiers and ordinary people who had nothing left to lose. Their ship was called the Last Question. It was old and slow, and not built for exploration. It was all they had. They searched for 3 months. They followed rumors and legends. They visited abandoned human stations and empty human worlds. They found nothing but dust and silence. Then Siho discovered the beacons. They were small, almost invisible, floating in the spaces between stars where no one ever looked. Admiral Taiwu had left them behind, each one containing a fragment of data. Alone, each fragment meant nothing. Together, they formed a map. The crew of the Last Question followed the map to the edge of known space, then beyond, past the last stars, past the last light, into a darkness so complete that even their instruments could not measure it. And there, in the nothing, they found a door. It was not like the threshold. This door was made of light, soft, golden light that pushed back the darkness like a gentle hand. A voice came through their communication system. It was an old voice, a tired voice, but strong. "This is Admiral Tai Wu of the Human Remnant Fleet. You have come a long way. State your purpose." Seiho spoke for the group. "We come to beg for help. The darkness is consuming the galaxy. Billions have died. Billions more will follow. We have nowhere else to turn." There was a long silence. "We know," Tai Wu finally said. "We have been watching. We have seen every world fall. We have heard every cry for help. Then why did you not come? Why did you not save them?" "Because we are not ready. And because they needed to understand." "Understand what?" "What they lost. What they threw away. What they mocked and ignored for 200 years. Seiho felt shame burning in his crystal heart. "We understand now. We were wrong. We were fools. Yes, you were." The door of light opened wider. Behind it, Seiho saw something impossible. A station the size of a moon, floating in a dimension that existed outside normal space. Ships surrounded it. Millions of ships. More than he had ever seen in one place. "Welcome to the vigil," Tai Wu said. "We have been waiting for you." The last question passed through the door and entered a new world. A world humanity had built in secret. A world designed for one purpose. Seiho met Minji on the station's observation deck. She was the architect of the vigil. 70 years old, with sharp eyes and steady hands. She had designed every system, every corridor, every weapon. "You built all of this," Seiho said, looking out at the impossible structure. "In 30 years? 200 years," Mingi corrected. "We began building the moment we discovered the threshold. We knew this day would come. We hoped we would be wrong. We hoped you would listen. But we prepared anyway." "What is this place? What does it do?" Minji smiled sadly. "It is many things. An ark to preserve what can be preserved. A shield to protect what can be protected. And a weapon. The only weapon that can hurt the darkness." "What kind of weapon?" "The darkness feeds on minds, on consciousness, on the light that lives inside thinking beings. Our weapon uses that same light. A psychic amplifier that can project a unified will across the entire galaxy. One mind made of billions of minds, one hope made of billions of hopes. That sounds powerful. It is. But it comes with a cost." "What cost?" Mingi did not answer. She just looked out at the ships and the station and the billions of humans waiting in stasis pods, ready for a fight they might not survive. "You will understand soon," she said. "The council must be told. Bring your leaders here. Let them see what we have built. Let them understand what we are about to do." She turned and walked away, leaving Seiho alone with his questions and his fear, and a terrible feeling that he knew exactly what the cost would be. Outside the vigil, the darkness continued to spread, and inside, humanity prepared for its final judgment. The council came to the vigil as beggars. High Counselor Morith led them. His insectoid body was thin now, worn down by years of war they could not win. Behind him came the remaining leaders of a dozen species. Once they had ruled the galaxy, now they had nothing left but fear. They stood in the great hall of the vigil, surrounded by humans who watched them with calm eyes. No hatred, no anger, just patience, like adults waiting for children to stop crying. Admiral Tai Wu entered the hall. He was ancient now. Over 100 years old, his body was held together by machines and determination. But his voice was still strong. "Came for salvation," Tai Wu said. "You came because your weapons failed, because your science failed, because everything you believed about your power and your wisdom turned out to be lies." Moreth lowered his head. "Yes, we were wrong about everything. We admit this freely. Please, help us. Help you." Tai Wu walked slowly to a window that showed the dimension outside. "For 200 years, humanity begged you for help. We warned you about the fungus. You laughed. We warned you about the beacons. You ignored us. We warned you about the threshold. You called us superstitious fools and authorized mining operations that destroyed the seals. I know. We were arrogant. We were blind. Yes, you were. Taiwu turned to face them. And now you want us to save you. After everything you did, after every insult, after every dismissed proposal and rejected warning, you want us to forget all of that and rescue you from the consequences of your own choices. The council members fell to their knees. All of them. Even Morith. They knelt before humans they had once considered primitive and worthless. We have no right to ask, Vecca said. We know this, but we ask anyway. Not for ourselves. For our children. For the innocent billions who never sat in the council chamber. For everyone who will die if the darkness is not stopped. Taiwu was silent for a long time. Then a young man stepped forward from the crowd of humans. He was perhaps 20 years old, tall and thin, with kind eyes that reminded Seiho of the scientist Doyon from the old recordings. His name was Sunwoo. He had been born on the Vigil. He had never seen Earth, never walked on soil or breathed air that had not been recycled 1,000 times. His entire life had been spent preparing for this moment. Admiral Sunwoo said, "May I speak?" Taiwu nodded. Sunwoo walked to where the council members knelt. He looked at them for a long moment. These beings had hated his people, mocked his people, driven his people into exile. He had every reason to hate them back. My grandmother told me stories about Earth, Sunwoo said. About blue skies and green forests and oceans so wide you could not see the other side. I will never see these things. None of us will. We gave up our home because you would not listen. Roth kept his head down. I am sorry. We are all sorry. I know you are. And I know that sorry is not enough. Nothing will ever be enough. Sunwoo knelt down so he could look into Morith's eyes. But my grandmother told me something else. She said that humanity's greatest strength was never our technology or our armies. It was something simpler, something you forgot how to do a long time ago. We could look at those who hurt us and still choose to help them, not because they deserved it, because that is who we are. Sunwoo stood and turned to face his people. Thousands of humans watched him. Millions more listened through screens and speakers across the Vigil. We built this weapon to save the galaxy, Sunwoo said, not to save ourselves. We knew from the beginning what it would cost. The amplifier requires minds to power it. Living minds. Conscious minds. When we activate it, those minds will burn. They will push back the darkness, but they will not survive. Seiho felt his crystal body crack with horror. You would sacrifice yourselves? All of you. All of us who choose to participate. And most of us will choose. Because we are human. Because we do not leave people behind. Not even people who left us behind. The council members wept. Even Morith. Tears fell from his insectoid eyes as he understood what humanity was offering. Not revenge. Not justice. Mercy. Unearned, undeserved mercy. Admiral Taiwu called for a vote. Every human on the Vigil could choose. Fight and die, or stay behind and survive. The vote took 3 hours. When it was finished, Taiwu announced the results. 12 billion humans have chosen to power the amplifier. 12 billion have chosen to give their lives for a galaxy that never wanted them. The amplifier activated at dawn. There was no dawn in the Vigil, of course. But humans had always measured important. Moments by the rising of a sun they could no longer see. 12 billion humans entered their pods. 12 billion minds linked together. 12 billion hearts beat as one, and then they burned. A wave of light exploded outward from the Vigil. It was not physical light. It was something else. Hope. Defiance. The stubborn refusal to surrender that had carried humanity through ice ages and plagues and wars and exile. The light touched the darkness, and the darkness screamed. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, the shadow retreated. It burned where the light touched it. It cracked and broke and fled. The threshold slammed shut with a force that shook the fabric of space itself, and in the Vigil, 12 billion humans fell silent. Their bodies remained. Their hearts still beat. but their minds were gone, given freely, spent completely, emptied so that others might live. Sun Wu was among them. His last thought, recorded by the amplifier, was simple: "Grandmother, I hope I made you proud." The survivors numbered in the hundreds of millions. Humans who had been too young or too old, or who had chosen to remain behind to guide the next generation. They welcomed the council members who stayed to help rebuild. They shared their technology. They taught their history. They forgave. 1,000 years later. The galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was different now. At its center stood a monument made of simple stone. Human words were carved into it in every language of Earth. The inscription read, "They judged us." And their judgment was mercy. Every species in the galaxy taught their children about humanity. The youngest species, the weakest species, the ones who walked quietly into the dark and carried enough light to save everyone. Archivist. Seiho lived long enough to record the final history. His words were played at every graduation ceremony in the galaxy, for every species, on every world. "They asked nothing of us," Seiho said in the recording. "That was their judgment. They showed us what we could have been, if we had only listened. Now, we must become worthy of their silence." The recording ended there. But on some worlds, on quiet nights when the stars seemed closer than usual, people added their own words. "Thank you," they whispered to the darkness. "We remember. We will always remember." And somewhere in the spaces between stars, the light that humanity had given still burned, small and quiet, asking for nothing, but burning all the same.